Hey, ladies and gents, welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, episode 110, where we talk about video games and everything happening in the industry. As always, I'm your host, Jared White, alongside Jordan.
Greetings, Jared. How are you doing?
Doing fine. And Dom.
For the last time, at least in the foreseeable future, praise the sun.
Praise the sun. Oh, yeah, because what are you... So, Spider-Man's next, and then is there anything close to Spider-Man that you're going to be picking up?
Actually, I started it. We'll get it. Actually, let's get right into what we've been playing. Speaking of,
we just grab the steering wheel real quick.
Let me just grab that and pull this over. Yep.
So, God of War 3 Remastered was free on PS Plus, so I already started that today. So that's what else I'm going to be getting into alongside. Probably we'll take a break and do Spider-Man, but that shouldn't take too long, and then I'll get back into God of War 3. So,
cool.
Yeah.
So wait. Hold on a second, Tom. So you just basically said to me, yeah, Spider-Man's coming out. I'll get through that, but then I'm getting to God of War 3, bro.
Well, I mean, yeah.
That's what you just said. What the fuck, dude? But I can't wait to play this PS3 game, bro. Like, it's remastered. It's awesome, dude.
1080p, man.
Yeah, that Sony exclusive coming out with Spider-Man, it looks alright. I'll get through it.
I think he was just phrasing it because, like, the subject of the sentence was God of War 3.
No, I'm definitely I'm ready for Spider-Man, dude. Like, let's go. Like, let's just go. Let's get Spidey in this thing.
Changing your tune.
So God of War 3 is what you've been playing at all? Like, it's the only thing you've been playing?
Well, I mean, okay. Man, I'm jumping all over the place here. So I've finished Dark Souls.
You grabbed the steering wheel. You took over.
You didn't know where you were going, Dom?
Just grab the wheel and just close my eyes and hit the gas.
Yeah.
I finished up Dark Souls Remastered. Got the platinum. Like I said, praise the sun. Oh man, that was some work.
Clap. Good job.
Yeah, it's just some work, man. But persevered. Probably did it in about half the time that they expected, because obviously I'm going through PSN trophy guide list or whatever, and they give you estimated time 90 plus hours. I assume I did it around 60 just because that's what experience does in that game, when you can just run through playthroughs and you know exactly where to go and things like that. But yeah, so it wasn't as bad as it could have been for a newcomer, but I'm glad. That was the first time I got that ultimate trophy or whatever. I got pretty close on 360 back in the day, getting all the achievements, but never quite hit it. So I'm glad I got that, crossed off the bucket list. So.
Did you ever get the plat for Salt and Sanctuary? I don't remember.
Yep,
yeah, you
I
did. Okay,
it's a good one.
I would count that in the Souls category. So that's another one to check off of the franchise plat list.
Yeah, definitely.
Is that everything? Anything you read or watch of note that you wanted to mention?
Watched Ozark. Like I said, I watched the first episode of the new season. I mean, there's one episode that's pretty good. Man, I think there was something else I watched, but I can't remember. But yeah, I got 2 hours into God of War 3. It's a very different game than the last one that came out. But it's pretty cool. It's pretty epic and visceral, I think. I mean, I killed spoilers for a PS3 game, I guess. I killed Poseidon with my bare hands, and it, you have the big epic fight with him, and then at the end it goes into first person perspective from Poseidon as Kratos beats him to literal death.
Yeah,
and it was extremely whoa, holy shit, kind of a okay
battle, man.
Yeah.
Because it's so cool because you end God of War 2 literally climbing up Mount Olympus with Gaia and other Titans, and you're on their back. I guess you haven't played the first two games, have you? Don't?
No, I'm not actually. So this is a weird spot.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So
wow.
Yeah, the very end of God of War 2 on PS2 is you climbing up on their backs, and the very beginning of God of War 3 on PS3 is you climbing up their backs on Mount Olympus. So it butts up right next to each other, and it's really cool because you start at the end of God of War 2, you start going up the mountain, you're like, oh shit, it's going down in God of War 3, and you start up God of War 3, to you, going back from the God of War reboot on PS4, it may not have been the same, but for me, when God of War came out on PS3, I was like, oh shit, we're doing this Mount Olympus thing, and you beat the fuck out of Poseidon, dude. That battle is crazy.
It was.
It's awesome.
But no, I could definitely feel what you're talking about. That makes a lot of sense because
in the scale. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this game just starts, and like you
Yeah.
just drop down, and Kratos is like, Zeus, let's go, like bring
Yeah.
it, like just
Yeah,
calls
like
him out. Like,
you
oh,
fight
shit,
Poseidon
things
like
going on.
5 minutes into the game. So
Yeah.
which you start several God of War games with a boss battle. It's not crazy, but you know.
Yeah, it's epic. That's all. It's the best adjective I can give it so far.
Yeah.
Epic and visceral. Just
Yeah, God of War 3 is fucking awesome. I bet it looks good. It's probably got like 60 frames a second and all that.
I mean, it's a PS3 game, but
Sure.
yeah, it's really smooth and the resolution's really high. But it's kind of like, yeah, it's still you can tell it's an old game, but not to any fault really.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's funny that you haven't played 1 and 2, and I've never played 3 or 4
nice.
technically. Yeah, so it's really cool to see that. Is that everything, Doug?
I think so. I'm probably missing something, but whatever.
Watching more
Must not
Clone
be
Wars?
important. Yeah, I'm still going through that. I'm into I mean, you know who is back now, and he's getting his thing going. And,
It's been long enough. You don't need this. You can.
I think we can talk about what is it, Darth Maul? You mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I actually we were just talking about Dark Knight's Metal before the comic book event from DC before the show, and when you're reintroduced to Darth Maul in the Clone Wars, he's this crazy fucked up dude living in this weird hovel, and he's been chopped in half because that's what happened last time we saw him. And the bottom half of his body is connected to this fucking spider body.
Yeah,
and
I did not see that coming.
They did that in Dark Knight's Metal with the Flash, and I was like, "Oh God, not again! I hate this. Why? Why are we doing this again?" So yeah, it's a fucked up situation because his made up brother, I guess the Night Sisters kind of like take his DNA or his essence and birth him a brother that's already an adult, or whatever.
It was weird. So,
him.
yeah, I watched through all that stuff too, and from what I could tell, they didn't. I mean, they just kind of go into this village where all that species, I don't even know what they're called. I can't remember.
The Night Sisters.
Well, not them, but the men, right? The Darth Mauls. Whatever they're called.
Is it Zabrax?
Day Brothers.
They're Zabrax.
Yeah, whatever they
Zabrak.
are. Yeah, the Night Sisters just kind of go into that village and like have a little competition and be like, which one of you is the strongest? And then they take him, and that's his brother, apparently.
Right.
They never even got into, at least not yet, how he was born or how they're literally brothers or not. It's not been explained yet, at least. But his brother's a cool character, too, how that came along.
Right.
Both of them are really interesting. We could talk about it a lot more, but
But you're at an interesting spot in the series. I mean,
yeah,
Darth Maul's coming back.
It's definitely the most interesting spot because there's like the first few seasons, like there's some campy. I mean, it's mostly like campy and childish, but now there's like some more interesting stuff going on. And obviously, Darth Maul is cool. And even though I knew he was gonna pop in here, first seeing him all like mentally destroyed and attached to that spider leg thing was like, holy crap! Like, okay,
Yeah.
I did not expect that.
if you want are like compelled enough to watch his storyline, it's actually crazy how his storyline continues from that into Rebels, which is disconnected by years, but they actually just continue that storyline and ends up. It's hard not to spoil stuff, but I'm just not even gonna get into there. Where we've seen him recently and all that stuff. There's just a lot. There's a lot.
I know what you mean. Anyway,
but what I was gonna say is one thing. If you're having a little trouble with the headcanon believing stuff, I thought it was cool. I read a comic that they did, and they basically explained that when he gets cut in half by Obi-Wan and falls down that shaft leads directly into Bacta tanks, which are like the floating tanks that they get sick and they like float around in, like Luke Skywalker does for a while in the movies. And so, and then of course he gets cauterized, like the wound is cauterized when he's chopped in half because it's a lightsaber. And so I was like, oh, I mean, it's definitely like, he was definitely supposed to die in that moment in the movie. Like George Lucas wasn't thinking about fucking Clone Wars down the road or whatever.
Right.
But it's like, okay, if you're going to do some weird bullshit, basically like comic book bullshit, to bring him back, then I guess it makes sense if he was cauterized. Like, you could be like a torso if you're cauterized, and then, of course, he falls right into the Bacta tank. I was like, yeah, okay, all right. Fun fact.
Yeah. Yeah, when I first heard about him having, like, the spider leg thing, I was like, interesting choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't last very long, I'll say that much. It is wacky, and I will say they do a good job of making him, like, almost scarily insane. Like, he's way, way out there. So that part's cool, but the spider legs don't last long, as goofy as they are.
I say it's one of the most solid go-to horror noises, like the sound of a spider crawling somewhere. Yeah, and it's an A+.
And especially when it's, like, metal legs, so it's like...
Yeah, ting, ting, ting. Yeah, terrifying. Is that everything done?
Yeah, what you guys been playing, man? That was a while.
You want to go next, Jordan, or you want me to go?
Sure, I shouldn't take too long because I didn't play a whole lot. Played some a little bit more Final Fantasy VII on the PlayStation 4 computer entertainment system. I'm now past the Midgar point. I'm out into the world map, and that's where I saved my game and stopped. That's my stopping point. So I'll be jumping back into that, I'm sure, once I finish up this stupid Spider-Man game. And then I've been finished up watching Young Justice Season 2. We talked about that, Jared, and I'm definitely awaiting... Was it you and I that talked about, like, Young Justice Season 3 was supposed to be this fall, wasn't it?
Yeah. When it was originally announced, it was supposed to be this fall.
When I started watching it, I was expecting to be able to watch Season 3 pretty much directly after Season 2. And then, of course, like... finishing up the last few episodes, I hear, they're not doing it till next year. So I'm like, Jesus Christ, that sucks.
But think about the people who watched Season 1 and then had to wait for Season 2 and then had to wait for Season 3.
Yeah, it's crazy how people, like, this is another one of those examples. If you ever have something that you love that you're like, man, I wish that would come back. Man, I wish we could get a sequel. Man, I wish we could get a reboot. Like, fucking let people know, because another example, Clone Wars is another example. It's like, shit gets canceled. If there's enough people out there that really fucking want it and are vocal about it and are pushing it, it's gonna fucking happen. And like I said, that happened with Clone Wars twice.
Bring Darth Maul back to life, yeah.
It's really happened with Clone Wars like multiple times now, because they brought it back for the last season on Netflix when they were like ramping down to go work on Rebels, and then they brought it back again now. And yeah, basically the same thing for Young Justice. I remember people talking about how they were putting on Young Justice on Netflix, even though they'd already seen it, and just like either leaving it on the background or like muting it and turning the TV off and just like letting Netflix play, just to like show Netflix that it's being watched and all that. And that I got to give a shout out to that community, because this show is really fucking amazing. The fact that it was ever canceled is ridiculous.
Man, can you imagine being one of those people that like had it looping on Netflix for that purpose, and then like you got what you wanted?
Right.
Yeah, you're exactly. Like, oh god, this is what Michael Huber must feel like for realize.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, I've had certain like things with that, because we're just getting so much of the things that a lot of people have been asking for so many years at this point. My thing a lot of times comes with like Blu-ray remasters of old shows or movies. Like, we just got Samurai Jack remastered. We're just about to get Batman the Animated Series remastered. So I'm like pining. Like, if shit is not in HD and it's like a classic series or movie to me, I'm all about pushing for that. So yeah, if you're passionate about something like that, I just wanted to say, like, fucking do it, because
with the age of the internet that we're in, for better or worse, like everyone has a voice, right? So it's like it's
better and worse. It's pros and cons. You know, that's one of the pros.
Exactly. Because usually a lot of these decisions are handled by people in a room that don't really listen to outside noise. But the fact that we have social media now and we can have such a loud voice, it's like it'd be a dumb business practice for them not to hear it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And really, when you think about it, even if that hadn't been the case, it's like, DC, you're making a streaming service, and you have this beloved show that only went 2 seasons and was about to continue on. Like, they're teasing new stuff for season 3 in the end of the show. So it's like, that would be, to me, if I'm working at DC, building DC Universe streaming, it's like, well, that's clearly on our fucking lineup either way, you know? But
yeah. It's an easy pull for the lineup for the first year or so.
Yeah, you've already got it ready to go, basically. Like, you have the license and all that. But besides that, let's see. I've continued watching Justice League as well. Just about finished with season 2. And did I tell you guys about how, like, every episode is like a multi-part episode?
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm still amazed, because I'm watching these episodes and like really they are like 40-minute chunks, because they're usually part 1 and part 2, and I'm just like, god damn, they're like the level of storytelling that they were on, which clearly is a big influence even to shows like Young Justice today. was really great, and obviously they started that with Batman the Animated Series, which is obviously on the level of Justice League. But yeah, I'm just amazed at this show, man. It's still gorgeous. The Blu-ray remasters, which this was actually one of those first shows that was actually on my wish list and got a remaster back in the day. But yeah, big shout out to that. Obviously, I'm knee deep in this like comic book superhero binge that I've been going on for quite some time actually now. It was anime before that. I'm sure it'll be video games here before too long. But yeah, just really enjoying that. And once I finish Justice League Season 2, I might actually hop into Batman Beyond before I go back to Justice League Unlimited. Because those two shows actually end up crossing over. So that is actually, I need to be more vocal about that because holy fucking shit do I want a Batman Beyond Blu-ray remaster. But don't need to get ahead of myself. We're still just about getting the Batman the Animated Series here in about a month. So anyways, also I was telling Dom that I finished Ozark Season 2. And holy shit, man, I'm starting to think that might be the best show on television. Like, Season 1 was so solid, and I saw a lot of people that were, like, mixed on it, which I thought, like, people were crazy. I do kind of see it at this point. It's kind of a Breaking Bad clone in the ways that we have, like, Dark Souls clones, video games type of thing with Salt and Sanctuary or whatever. Because it's basically like a straight-laced dude who ends up, being, like, really entrenched in like this whole cartel system and these illegal operations. It's kind of like that One Bad Day type of thing if you think about it. So I'm definitely enjoying it though. Like that doesn't bother me because I'm just really into like crime dramas and like anytime you like dealing with black market or like, oh, we're gonna launder this or we're gonna find a way to get this thing that's like illegal in 7 countries. I'm like, fucking bring me along for the ride because that's a story I want to watch. I just love watching like crime drama for whatever reason. Probably because I'm a degenerate criminal by night and you won't even know about it. But who knows? But anyways, this show is just fucking amazing, dude. Like the last line is still haunting me. Like I've thought about it multiple times today in the way that you were talking about the last line of Punisher, Jared. It's on that level. And this show is so beautiful, and the acting is just out of this world, especially Laura Linney and Jason Bateman, who are the 2 main leads. Just knock it out of the park every episode. And then, actually, I want to look up, as I'm speaking, I'm going to look up this girl's name. Her character name is Ruth.
Yeah, she's
in
good.
the show. Yeah. And she plays this younger girl of this, like, redneck family that Jason Bateman's character kind of, fucks around with in business and stuff. And her name is Julia Garner. Fucking huge shout out to her. I originally saw her in The Americans, and she did a really good job in The Americans. She was like the daughter of this politician who one of the main characters was like having kind of this weird pseudo relationship with, so that he could be in her house and like be like putting stuff in her dad's briefcase and shit, like microphones and stuff. So that was an interesting role that she played really well, but now she's like knee deep in acting her ass off, I should say, because like there's lines that she gives, there's little monologues that she has, there's just scenes that she's in, and she's just, like wrecking me emotionally because of some of the shit that's going down and the way that she's handling it, her character is handling it and all that. So huge shout out to her because she's obviously like she's one of those people. Jared, we'll talk about this later in the show, kind of the Witcher TV series and whether they could be using some people that maybe you haven't heard of, but if you watch a lot of TV or movies you might recognize. She's one of those people that you can tell is really starting to come up. She was also in the Waco miniseries with Taylor Kitsch that was about David
Waco?
No, Waco, Texas. David Koresh.
Yeah.
Which is like the cult thing. She was like part of that cult in that show. So yeah, she's like popping up and she's doing a really good job every time I see her. So big shout out to Julia Garner, a young actress. She is, let's see how old she is here. seeing it. Oh, you're looking her up too? Yeah, I think she is like that age. For whatever reason, IMDb is not showing me. But yeah, she's about our age. She's a young gal. And she is really knocking it out of the park. So props to her, props to Ozark and the showrunners and all that. I'm really enjoying it. And gosh, I mean, I feel the same way that I did at the end of last season, where it's like, holy fuck, how am I going to wait a year for this? But the wait is well worth it. So loving that Ozark. That's all I got.
Before I hop into what I've been playing, she's 24, so I was pretty close.
24, yep.
1 year off. So in terms of what I've been playing, I have actually a bit of games to talk about. So first up, PUBG. It was the 1.0 release this week on Xbox.
Oh yeah.
Sure. It's actually running really stable. They launched the new map Sanook. They launched achievements. They launched the battle pass system, kind of like how Fortnite has. It's been on PC, but these are all things that are launching now on Xbox. The game runs a lot smoother. It still has a little bit of that PUBG,
charm,
personality.
Yeah.
But to way less of a regard. And like the thing that I'll always say about PUBG is that the intensity in a PUBG game is something that I haven't experienced in any of the other battle royale games I've played. Like
That's
just the
important.
pure intensity of those games. For better or worse, some people say that that's one of the reasons they don't play PUBG is because it is a little too intense for them, which I understand.
Oh wow! Can't hang with the heat, kids. Get out of the kitchen.
I got a heart condition. Yeah. Whatever works for you, it's fine. So that was great. It actually met my expectations, which is awesome. Graveyard Keeper. So this is a game I've been talking about for a while. So it's like Stardew Valley, except you run a graveyard and trying to get your graveyard better. I've talked about before how deep this game is. I unlocked a new part of this game that I didn't even know was in it. This game also has a dungeon crawling aspect to it, where you craft swords and armor, and you go and you try to go through numbered rooms, numbered 1 through 20, and they progressively get harder with new enemies. So it's a simulation where you take care of a graveyard.
Yeah.
There's a whole cooking system in the game. There's a gardening system in the game. There's a fishing system in the game. There's a dungeon crawling system in the game. There's an alchemy system in the game. Like, this game is so deep. Like, the trees and skills and everything that you can do. The economy is really great. The economy. I think this game's maybe like $20, $15. It's on Game Pass, which is awesome.
Okay.
This is one of those games on Game Pass where, like, if I was a kid who didn't have a lot of expendable income and I got $10 a month to buy Game Pass, this game will last you hours and hours and hours. A normal day, like if you don't sim or anything, probably takes about 10 to 15 minutes. But when you run out of your energy, you want to go into bed and regain your energy, right? So kind of like fast forwards through time. Given that, I've cumulatively played in game time over a year. So over 350 days.
A lot of graves.
I think I'm over 400 days. Yeah, but I recently found this dungeon crawling mechanic in the game where, yeah, there's these different rooms and you fight these different enemies and they progressively get harder. There's like these like weird vampire creatures and different slimes, and it's really cool the way this game opens up. I'm really enjoying it. I don't even think I've scratched the surface on it. I'm just really astounded by this game. It's phenomenal. I don't even know if it's fully released on PC yet. I think it's still one of those games that's like getting updates. And the last game I want to talk about is The Messenger. So this one's tough to talk about. Do either of you plan on playing The Messenger?
I've thought about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those. Like,
okay, so
it's
like
on my Switch wish list right now. I'll say that.
Your Switch
yeah,
list?
like this game.
Switch list.
This game to me is like head to head with Celeste. I've completed it now. I've beat the game. It is like so good. My only gripe with it would be that I think it was like partially falsely advertised.
Ooh. Thinking about a
really,
lawsuit, Jared?
No. It's not a bad thing. But and I want you guys to be prepared for this because I don't think this is a spoiler. This is giving you guys the reasonable expectations going into this game.
Is the messenger a girl at the end of the game? Does he take his helmet off and let his long hair flow?
The first half of the game is 8-bit. The second half of the game is 16-bit. And then once you beat the game, quote unquote, I don't even think it's technically beating the game, but you finish like the main story. You don't really. It's weird. I've read on this, and it's like you don't get end credits yet, So once you beat the game, quote unquote,
so is
you
this
now
like Nier Automata? Automata?
Maybe. So the first half of the game is 8-bit.
Like 5 times, and that's the full experience.
No. Not necessarily that. So the first half of the game is 8-bit. The second half of the game is 16-bit. Then once you beat the game, you can switch between those worlds, and you go back, and it's now a Castlevania game, where there's areas that were previously... So the areas that you played that were 8-bit at the first half of the game are now possibly 16-bit, so it opens up new areas in those levels, and at the second half of the game that were just 16-bit, you can now go over and look at the 8-bit design of it, and there's hidden areas, you know what I mean? So kind of like... It's kind of like playing through the game twice because you have the option, and it's about opening these areas you didn't have access to before. The platforming gameplay is like phenomenal. It's super tight. The difficulty, this game is hard. Like, and I personally enjoy that. We've talked about how I love difficult games, and this game is very difficult. The last 2 bosses took me individually each about a good 30 to 45 minutes to beat, and it was all about pattern recognition and figuring out what to do. Because the later bosses really depend, and this is something I enjoy, really depend on you knowing the mechanics of the messenger. You can't just hack and slash your way through bosses. You have to be able to do... The main mechanic of the messenger is every time you strike an enemy or strike an object, you get an extra jump. And that's something you have to master by the end of this game, which I appreciate because it's telling you, no, you had to have, by this point, learned how to play our game to beat our game, you know? And once you start thinking in that way of... You know, you have to beat this game in the mechanics that they've taught you over the course of playing through it. The boss battles become a little bit easier, but they're still pretty difficult. And the variety of bosses and the way things change up and the different kinds of attacks they throw at you are really refreshing. It's a great game. Like, the fact that I've gotten Hollow Knight, Celeste, and this all in the same year is crazy. Because they're all tremendous to me. I haven't even beat Hollow Knight yet. Played that game's way longer than both Celeste and Messenger combined. But yeah, Messenger is fantastic. I would highly suggest you guys get it. The one thing like I said, I wanted to warn you guys on is it was kind of advertised as like throughout the game you switch back and forth between 8 and 16-bit. That's not necessarily the case. It's half of the game's 8-bit, the second half is 16-bit, and then it turns into a Castlevania game where you go and you go back and forth through time. Because that's the difference. The reason you're in 16-bit is because you're going forward in time, and that has story ramifications.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so it's not just changing the graphics. It's in 16-bit, you're forward in time.
So are you bringing a message through time?
Yes, you have a you have a message, and there's actually
Dom.
There's a really cool twist ending that has some slight meta comedic twist to it.
Ooh.
But it legitimately on its own is a really cool twist for the game and really funny.
He takes his helmet off and flows his hair, and he's a girl. It's like Samus from Metroid.
And that's one thing I'll give this game credit for, is that it knows what it is. Like, a lot of times when you go to the shopkeep to upgrade, that's another thing when you finish the game, a bunch of new paths on the upgrade tree unlock, so new stuff you can unlock. It knows what it is and it makes fun of itself for it, but it knows the points that it does better than a lot of other games, if that makes sense. So it's willing to poke fun at the tropes of video games like it, the 2D retro side-scrollers, 2D platformers. But it knows what it's doing and it does it so well. Like I said, the controls in this game are phenomenal. It's tough for me to decide whether or not I think this game is better than Celeste.
I was just going to ask.
Very different. Though they're both 2D platformers, they control a lot differently. But how would I say this? You know how in Celeste, that game is... You have to know how that game functions in order to make it through the later stages of that game, Dom. Like... You have to know how like the double jumps work and your specific Celeste movement to get around like the very tight areas, especially like when you're climbing the mountain towards the end of the game. That's what this game is. Like, by the end of it, if you're not comfortable with the controls, you're going to have a very hard time beating it. And there's unlockables and secrets and twists and like I really enjoy this game. I'm still going to go through and play and see how the Castlevania aspect really changes the gameplay to see if it's even worth playing after the fact, because I've read both ways. I've read that once you get to that point where you can go back and unlock areas you haven't seen before, it's not really worth it. But to other people, they're like, that's where the game really gets going. So I'm kind of going to play myself and see where I lie on that, because it is so polarizing, that aspect. In terms of reviews, this game got like high 8s and 9s. So, no surprise. Very fantastic game. I think it's probably going to get a lot of rewards at the end of the year. if Celeste doesn't take him. It's like going to be a really close competition.
Yeah, you were mentioning some of the other difficult games throughout the year, Celeste, Hollow Knight. Have you thought about Dead Cells at all? Picking up Dead Cells?
I haven't played Dead Cells. I plan to play it by the end of the year. But because I haven't played it myself, I don't want to speak to it. That's another game that I'm going to probably add to the list by the end of the year.
I was going to say,
I think it's just another great game.
If you're hankering for these difficult platformers, this is, I mean, it's very Souls-like. It's more, I guess, Bloodborne. But yeah, I think you'll enjoy Dead Cells, and I think I'll enjoy The Messenger.
So is Dead Cells more? That's more focused on combat, right? Whereas Celeste is purely platforming.
Platforming, yeah.
Messengers.
And Messengers
Dead Cells
between.
You played Hollow Knight, so Dead Cells is kind of similar to that.
Okay.
Except for it being a roguelike, right?
Yeah, you just add in roguelike where it changes every time, the layout.
The last thing I want to talk about, we mentioned it briefly before. I finished The Punisher. Fantastic. I was talking with Jordan before the show that I think it's on the cusp for me. I don't know if I would put Daredevil Season 1 or it ahead of it. I'm still thinking about that. I'm leaning Punisher just because it's like one of the biggest issues with Daredevil Season 1 is Foggy Nelson, the actor. He's not terrible, but he's not great. And he's obviously like the second most important character in the first season of Daredevil. I mean, Karen Page is there too, I guess. You can make an argument that she's more important than him. But, yeah, the Punisher's so good. The acting is so well done. Like, obviously, people say that Robert Downey Jr. is Tony Stark, which I fully agree with. He is that character for me. For the rest of my life, I think whenever I think about Tony Stark, I'll think of Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal. And, like, John Bernthal to me, I think at this point, is Frank Castle. Like, he is just so good. Such a great actor. I've talked about before, I think he's one of the few people in the Netflix shows that can make the jump to the big screen because we've seen him be in big Hollywood movies before. He has that star quality.
But see, I mean, like, I think his name's Charlie Cox from Daredevil.
I said one of the few. I didn't say the only one.
Well, I'm just saying, like, I don't really know that there's anybody that couldn't, like, I mean, you couldn't imagine Luke Cage in a Marvel movie. You couldn't imagine Jessica Jones. Like,
no, I mean like leading their own movie, like not appearing in a Marvel movie.
I don't think you're saying I think Punisher could be in his own MCU movie and people would dig it.
Yes, people would pay to watch John Bernthal,
or Jessica, or Luke Cage. Or
yeah. I'm not trying to say they're acting. I'm saying their star power of like people going out to see a movie that they're headlining. I don't know if any of those other actors, as good as they are, can do that. I think John Bernthal has enough, as they say in the industry, clout and interest. People have seen him in a lot of other blockbuster movies.
Yes,
anyways.
But I would just say that at this point, like, let's say they decided to make a movie for each of the characters we just mentioned. I mean, people would just go fucking see it because the MCU has clout at this point, you know?
Yeah, but then there's a whole argument of, like, how much are they going to tie into and stuff. That's a whole other discussion. Anyways, so The Punisher, love the guy who plays Billy Russo. We were talking about before the show that it's the same actor who appeared in the first season of Westworld. He's like the friend who goes into Westworld with like one of the main characters. He's in 2
as well. He's in season 2.
Okay, I haven't seen season 2 yet. And he's a fantastic actor. The guy who plays Micro is great. It's just a well-crafted story. I think the book cap for the season is really good. The way it begins with a brutal showcase of Frank's ability to just kill everybody in his path. I mean, the scene where you see him snipe a guy from the United States into Mexico, that sniper shot that he has, where he shoots it, and then you wait about 3 or 4 seconds, and then the guy gets shot and dies, and then it pans back, and you see how far away he was. Yeah. It's really cool. Really well done. And then at the end of the show, they really wrap up his character, and they finish the show in a way of, like, there was closure, but there is still enough there to be like, oh, if there's a second season, which we now know there is, there's enough threads there with Billy Russo and other characters. One of the more underplayed actors that I don't think gets enough love when I was reading some reviews after I finished the show was the lady who plays Madani, who is the lead agent in the show. I thought she was fantastic. Like, I really liked her as an actress. I would love to see her.
I was going the opposite way.
Oh, I really enjoyed her.
I
would really like to see her be like Queen Bee.
My God, could you be more of a like tough broad in the bureau type of thing? Like, I'm not gonna let any of the men get me down. I'm not gonna let it, like. violence against me. No way. You know I'll be at the office tomorrow morning because I'm just hard-nosed like that. I'm a hard-nosed FBI kind of gal. I'm like, all right.
I think she was a more complex character than that, especially all the scenes with her and Billy Russo of like how he used that to his advantage to basically manipulate her. Like their whole relationship was him manipulating her into not being that character.
And I thought that was thin because I was like, clearly that like before those two characters even like met or like they crossed paths. I was like, this is clearly gonna happen. I don't know. I just wasn't into her, and I didn't love the actress, but to each his own.
To each their own. Let's hop into the news because we're running kind of long here. First bit of news isn't really news. I just wanted to kind of go over Spider-Man since we're itching to play that game. Comes out tomorrow is the day of recording this. So we're recording on September 6th. So it's currently sitting at an 87 on Metacritic. Anyway, take it with a grain of salt. All your opinions on Metacritic, it's fine. Its review scores range from like the mid 80s all the way up to like the high 90s. There's even some outlets that give it like 10 out of 10s or like 9/8 and 9s and stuff like that. And from all of the stuff I've gathered, I've kind of like stayed away from actually watching any reviews because some people have been getting blasted for spoiling stuff. Like GameSpot apparently and Digital Foundry spoiled some major stuff in the game during their reviews.
I'm so glad. I was about to click on that Digital Foundry video, and I thought about like maybe I'll just listen to the audio because I wanted to hear them talk about how it runs and like the checkerboard 4K or whatever the fuck. But and it's even in a video like that, they're not talking about story. They're not reviewing the game or anything like that. But
you're just putting footage, Yeah,
it's footage. You're seeing stuff that you wouldn't have seen until late game. Maybe he's wearing a Spidey suit that you didn't know about. The Venom suit or something. So yeah, it sucks.
In the Digital Foundry thing, it's specifically like a story thing that is a spoiler.
Wow.
The suit you can kind of get away with. It's like, okay, that sucks that you saw that, but it's crazy.
That isn't actually a spoiler, but it's like a Jordan spoiler. Like, I don't want to be... Like, I consider that a spoiler for me and myself. Yeah. Like, if someone showed me a suit, I wouldn't be like, dude, you spoiled it. But for me, it's like, I don't want to know anything.
It's a media blackout spoiler. It's for people who, don't want to know anything.
Right.
So, seeing all of the news I've gathered, at its worst, it's being touted as, like, the best Spider-Man game ever, which on its own is cool. Some people may be like, oh, what competition does it have? But a lot of like the Neversoft games and even the like Web of Shadows games, they were better than like average. They usually scored like in the 8s and stuff, and people really enjoyed them.
I would say those are like swimming in 7s type of thing.
Yeah. So it being the best Spider-Man game on its own doesn't really lend much to it. But even at its best, many outlets are considering it a real contender for Game of the Year. Obviously, it has very stiff competition with God of War, but it's cool to see. It's cool to see it meet expectations from all these outlets. Obviously, we'll have our own personal impressions when all of us jump into the game. But one of the things I personally am most worried for with games, and it's not just Spider-Man, it's games in general, is like, I'm worried that they're not going to live up to the hype. But then there's a second tier to that of like, I'm worried that they're not going to review well or people aren't going to like them. And then I'm worried that I'm not going to like them. So like Mass Effect Andromeda was a case where it really bummed me out that it didn't release to great reviews and great scores. But then once I was able to play the game after the updates and see it for what it was, I personally enjoyed it, so I was cool with that.
Right.
The worst case scenario is that if a game isn't critically well received and then I also don't like it, it's like a double negative.
Yeah. Well, it sucks. It's like, we've talked about this before, but like from now on, Jared, when you bring up in discussions Mass Effect Andromeda as a game you like, you're kind of almost going to be expecting someone to say like, oh, that piece of garbage or whatever. It's like, wait, but did you play it after the updates? Did you play it after they fixed the tired face?
Did you play it at all?
Like, yeah, did you play it at all? Oh, God, don't even get me started on people like, yeah, that movie's a piece of shit, but you haven't seen it, so fuck off. But yeah, that same thing happened to me with Unity, Assassin's Creed Unity, where it's like, dude, once they fixed... Because basically... mostly what it was is their lighting was way too good in that game. Like the lighting engine was just way ahead of its time, as was the whole like, let's have a fucking 500 people stand in the middle of this courtyard and like look at all the movements and they're all doing independent movements. It's like, shut the fuck up. It's making this game run terribly. So once they like kind of fix the frame rate and stuff and the glitches, that's a solid game. I like the story. I like the characters. I love the gameplay. Love being in Paris. So it's like, it sucks that every time I bring up Unity, we can't just have a discussion like, oh, what'd you think of that game? Oh, I thought this. It's like, oh, we got to tear it to pieces, even though we probably only played, most people probably only played a couple hours, if that. So basically I'm saying I feel for future you, Jared.
Well, and the cool thing is, so I was super excited for the game. I know you were super excited for the game, Jordan, because we both are huge Spider-Man fans as well. Outside of like video games, we just love comics, obviously. And I know you, Dom, you were interested and excited for it, but correct me if I'm wrong, not as much as like Jordan and I were, right? Like you were
you guys probably,
interested in the game, but
yeah, I still really like Spider-Man. Like those are my other favorite superhero movies besides Batman. But then it's kind of after that where I sort of like trail off as far as superhero stuff, but I'm into this. Like I'm ready, and Homecoming, that movie was fucking awesome. So I was real hyped for this, and I'm ready for this style of game too. This kind of gameplay, I'm like ready for that, especially after all this damn Dark Souls I've been playing.
Before we hop into the next news story, the one thing I want to say is the weirdest gripe I've heard about this game from people is that people have heard is that this game is the story for the game, not including like side activities and stuff. The story is about 20 hours, and people are like, for an open world game, that's it. And for me personally, I'm like, that's great. I'm cool with that. Like 20 hours. That's I mean, long. I could even, I wouldn't even mind if it was like 15 or 12. Like, but
unless it's the fucking, unless it's the fucking Witcher, then I don't know what game you couldn't like. Just do the critical path and beat it in 20 hours. Like, I'm talking open world.
Yeah, like, it's very weird to me. It's a very
Ubisoft, weird... Any Assassin's Creed or Ubisoft game, you're telling me that you're just doing the main path of the game and you can't beat the story in 20 fucking hours? No, that's totally normal. That's bullshit. That's puddles is what it is, Jared. It's fucking puddles.
Well, yeah, it's like, it's almost twice the length of Arkham Asylum. Obviously, Arkham Asylum isn't an open world game, so it's a weird comparison. And I don't know the runtimes for City and Night, like the average.
20. It's like more like 10.
Do you know how hard it is to write a story that arcs over 20 hours?
Yeah.
20 hours of story! Fuck off!
I think we're on agreement. That's perfectly fine. Like,
yeah,
if anything,
come
we would be down
on,
even
dude.
if it was shorter. Like, who cares?
Jesus.
The interesting thing for me going into Spider-Man personally is I've recently been playing the Batman games, obviously. So I finished Asylum. I'm still going through City. I probably won't beat it by Spider-Man coming out. It comes out tomorrow, obviously. And I've played Night.
Well, you just gotta finish up Spider-Man real quick, and then you can get back to the important stuff.
Yeah, I played about a third of Night. And the interesting thing to me is, like, the reason Asylum's so good is because it is, like, closed off, and it isn't a huge open world, right? It's still very big, but it's not like an open world game. And I think that lends to how good that game is.
It's that tight, perfect experience.
And my problems that I'm having with City is that it just feels like a weird middle ground. And like I've said before, if I played these games as they came out and completed them as they came out, I'd probably feel different because I'm going from like Asylum to City to Night. But the fact that I've already played Night and then I'm going to finish City, it just feels like a weird middle ground. Like I really like how enclosed Asylum was, you know what I mean? And I really love how open Night is. Anyways, to my point, my question is, this game's obviously getting a sequel. Do you think the open world just gets bigger, or do you think it's kind of like the same map size, but it'll be more dense in the sequel? Like, how do we think when they make the sequel, how is it going to expand?
I don't necessarily know that if it is a solid-sized open world with a good amount of things to do in it, that you'll need to change that. I've actually, before Arkham Knight came out, I went back on PC and played Asylum in City all the way through again. And yeah, the first time I played through Arkham City, it's like, oh damn, this open world is fucking huge, you know?
Yeah.
Even then, knowing that it's only old Gotham, like you're not experiencing all of Gotham City. But then playing it the second time, it was like, oh yeah, this is fucking tiny. So I totally think it's kind of like what we were talking about with Spider-Man, where the movie, I guess last week, where we were talking about how I see it kind of through like the lens of the time, and you're kind of like, well, if it doesn't hold up today, dude, like I don't know what to fucking tell you. Like it looks like shit, you know. So
I did not say that about Spider-Man.
No, you know what? Like you were saying, the Green Goblin looks like shit, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. The Green Goblin suit looks like shit, dude. I'm like, yeah, but back in the day, it did. So I think that's the lens. I think that's the lens, which is like, back in the day, it was a huge open world, and now, especially, not even just having played other open world games from the future, I guess. But having played the future of that series where Arkham Knight does open up so much, feeling that like segment of old Gotham, I'm sure it feels really tiny, especially now.
it feels like claustrophobic in a way. I'm not saying the game's bad. I'm enjoying City, but it feels like a weird middle ground because like in Arkham Asylum, you know why it's not a huge open world is because you're stuck there, right? Right. You're stuck at Arkham Asylum, and then at night it's obviously Gotham. So playing City in retrospect, it feels just like a weird middle ground, you know, like a middle child. It feels weird.
Like a middle child.
Of scope.
Did you almost say like a middle child?
Well, it is technically.
I'm gonna tell my middle brother, like, hey, you're all right, but you're a half measure, dude. Like,
yeah, that's the Brady Bunch syndrome. But yeah, so to my question, what do you guys think they'll do? Obviously, we haven't played the game yet, but we know it's an open world game.
Sure.
Like, how are they gonna for the sequel? How are they gonna change that? Is it gonna be scope? Is it gonna be, like I said, depth? Like, what's gonna be the big thing to get people excited for the sequel? You know.
So it seems like, I don't know, I've watched one review and then only listened to like Greg Miller talk about it a bunch, but apparently the story is really, really good and engaging, right? Like all the characters.
Which is great, yeah.
And
Spoilers!
And I'm not, I've only seen like, actually I didn't even see like the Andrew Garfield movies, only the first one, and I like didn't like it. So
You're fine.
Yeah, so like I didn't even know like who Miles Morales was. I was like, when that like popped, I was like,
oh, he's not in those movies.
Right. So,
no, he's saying in general, like with Spider-Man, he didn't know who Miles Morales was. He's saying,
right.
Yeah, I haven't seen those movies, and I also didn't know who Miles Morales was. Yeah,
you're just not like deep into that lore.
Right. So like when he came up, I was like, why is everyone freaking out? Who's this Hispanic kid or whatever? I don't understand the significance, right? But apparently, I mean, from what I've gathered a little bit, like I think to answer your question, Jared, the next game, maybe we see some other characters. Because apparently, like, you play sections as Peter Parker and as Mary Jane and stuff in this game. Yeah. So, like,
I think,
and maybe others that haven't been spoiled for me yet. But I mean,
interesting,
right? Yeah. I could see the next game, like, you become. To me, I don't know enough about Miles Morales or what he becomes, so I'm not even gonna like attempt an ignorant spoiler.
He is Peter Parker from another universe. Like, he is Spider-Man in the Ultimate Universe, which is totally separate. And then everybody liked him so much that when they were like finishing off the Ultimate Universe, they were like, "Let's just bring him over, man." So they got
that'd be
into
crazy.
The main universe.
Okay, so there's potentially some freedom there where they could do something with him, or again,
that'd be cool.
Maybe you become like you're in the Venom suit for half the game or something to like change the mechanics really fundamentally or something like that.
Ooh,
so maybe like it's the same world. The same size, maybe more dense, but like
it's got to be New York, right? Yeah, like they can't be like, oh, the second Spider-Man game's in Chicago. That's not a fucking thing.
It'd be crazy if something prevents Peter from being Spider-Man. And this is all funny because we haven't even played the game yet. But it'd be interesting if in the sequel something prevents Peter from being Spider-Man. So portions of the game you have to play as Miles because the only sections of the game you can play as Peter Parker are the Peter Parker sections.
There you go.
God,
you're trying to save him.
Filling up beakers and dumb bullshit like that.
Well, not you know what I mean. It's like some definitely. Interesting stuff, but...
Definitely.
Yeah,
I
maybe
think
they do that.
We are currently headed into, we're in the middle of edge of Spider-Geddon, and so we're about to head into Spider-Geddon in the comics, which is kind of a sequel to Spider-Verse. And basically what it is they're throwing like the kitchen, it's like a kitchen sink sort of thing. Like they're doing everything. In fact, they're bringing in so many different alternate universe Spider-Man that the literal character, the version of Peter Parker from the video game, is going to show up in the Spider-Geddon comic. So he's actually going to be canon, Dom, like within the comics world, which is fucking weird. All that to say, I think we could get like a Spider-Verse type of thing, or maybe even, I don't know if you know about this, but Spider Island is an arc where all of New York gets spider powers, or maybe all of Manhattan, but everybody gets spider powers, and that's I think maybe how Gwen Stacy maybe originally gets her powers. All that to say, I think that it could be like a Spider Family thing, kind of like the Bat Family. There's enough characters now with Miles and Gwen and Spider Girl if you wanted to have that.
Well, and then like we could all like save up and get the passes for Spider Land, that new theme park, right? and then we could just have a little spider vacation, like Spider Island, Spider Verse. Like, come on, Spider-Geddon. Fuck, like some creativity flowing, guys.
They do the same stuff in Batman. Don't sit here on your high horse and act like
I don't understand. I'm like astonished at the fact that Dom's so like obliterated by comic book bullshit. Like, Have we not had
yeah,
this
not too
conversation, Dom? Like, do I need to explain how dumb fucking comics are? So yeah, I'm
but
just
in a
saying,
great way. They're dumb in a great way.
Yes, absolutely. Good and the bad. I'm not saying like we should go deep into like some alternate universe shit and like let's go into the multiverse. I'm just saying like let's say
like that Flashpoint shit. Get out of here.
No. We're not doing all that. We're not like going back and changing the timeline or anything. We're just having extra members of the Spider-Man family. I will say it looks like for this game, I've got to be honest, I've been a little bit worried. It seems like they're almost like blowing their load a little too early here because we get an E3 demo with all of the Sinister Six, and you see all of them except for the last guy, which, sounds like Doc Ock. It's like, it's not like padded footsteps. Like, it sounds like metal on the ground. So it's like, we've seen that. We've seen Miles Morales teased. We've seen all this stuff. And so
from stuff I've read, Jordan, there's characters in this that Spider-Man fans will know and love that haven't been shown, that are surprises.
Right. Which I'm sure. Behind Batman, Spider-Man has the biggest and best rogues gallery, which obviously Batman takes the crown any day of the week. But the villains of Spider-Man are many. And like, even though you take the Sinister Six, and that's a big group of, 6 villains, that's a lot of fucking villains. There's still going to be tons and tons and tons more that you could pull from. But I just think that if you have Sinister Six, and then you also have Doc Ock or Venom in the game, well, it's like then, yes, Jared, you're right. There are going to be things that we're going to see that we don't know about that we're still going to enjoy. But then game 2 and 3, it's like, well, the well's kind of running dry, or you're having to bring back Venom for a second time, or fucking Rhino, and like kind of dig a little bit deeper into places that like people don't care about as much.
Yeah, I think that'll be an interesting conversation when we do our spoiler talk about this whole conversation. I think will be a lot interesting. Once we a lot more interesting.
I will say, I think they basically said like Green Goblin's not in this one because like he and Harry are overseas doing some shit. So it's clear that like, okay, well, they're saving that. We know that they're saving the Goblin, or
I don't think we'll see the symbiotes either.
Yeah, the symbiote won't be in this. So yeah, I guess they could do a trilogy because they're doing Sinister Six probably, and I bet like Doc Ock's a big part of this game, and then probably Goblin or Hobgoblin, and then Venom or whatever. Third game.
I doubt we'll see like Kraven either, or Vulture maybe. There's some ideas. Real quick to your point, Dom, you said you've never heard of Miles Morales before. Do you know he was actually teased in Spider-Man Homecoming? You know when Peter Parker runs into Donald Glover and he's like, I have a nephew in the city?
Oh, okay.
The nephew, so the nephew is Miles Morales.
Okay.
Yeah. Donald Glover is the Prowler.
Yeah.
Which
He's
Jared called. Fucking shout out to Jared, dude. I remember watching the video where he explains it perfectly. And then I'm like, I don't know, Jared, that's kind of a stretch. And that's exactly how the fucking movie happens, dude. Which usually I don't actually like watching those videos because, like, Star Wars Force Awakens, it's like, well, I kind of knew the fucking movie before I even saw it because people predicted it or whatever. But just that one little part, I was like, damn, Jared, you know what's up, dude.
It's one of those things like, oh, yes, me reading comics actually paid off for this. It was really cool.
Yeah.
So the last news story here, we're not running too long, so we should have some time to talk about it. Henry Cavill was cast as Geralt in Netflix's Witcher series. So this is by Nelly Andreeva over at Deadline. They broke this story. Henry Cavill has been cast as Geralt of Rivia in Netflix's upcoming Witcher series. Alongside fans, Hollywood at large was surprised by this move that Cavill made. He's currently Superman and is coming off a great performance in Mission Impossible 6 Fallout. Many of these people feel that he's trading in big roles he's potentially opened up for himself through Superman and obviously Mission Impossible. Cavill is a noted giant nerd and gamer, and actually was reported as almost missing his casting call from Zack Snyder, letting him know he landed the role of Superman because he was raiding in World of Warcraft, which is crazy. During the Mission Impossible 6 press tour, Cavill had expressed interest in his love for the Witcher series and said that playing Geralt would be a dream role of his. Because this is right around the time that the Netflix series was announced and BossLogic had made the fan art of him as Geralt. So it was like, he looked really good as it, obviously, because BossLogic nails that stuff all the time.
Did you see, so you showed me the tweet from the producer, or was it the director? I can't remember.
I'm going to get into that shortly, yeah.
Well, are you going to get into like the tweet from, tweet or post, whatever it was, from Henry Cavill himself?
Oh, yeah, well, I'll mention that right
after. About his address change?
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, Lauren Hisrich, who's a showrunner and writer for the Witcher series, who actually has done work for The Defenders and Daredevil on Netflix as well. So she has a history there. She said, he was my first meeting. I didn't have writers or scripts yet, just a green light and a lot of passion. That was 4 months ago, and I've never forgotten the passion he brought. He is Geralt. He always has been. I'm so thrilled to welcome him, Henry Cavill, to the Witcher family. Which that's awesome, because if the showrunner and writer notice the passion that this guy has, it's awesome.
That's hype.
Dude, there's nobody, and I mean, there probably is somebody, but like, the way he talks about this shit, I'm like, there's no way there's another actor of your caliber that knows this much shit about The Witcher. There just can't. Like, I couldn't fathom it. So he knows what the fuck is up.
Well, yeah, and then like Don was saying, he did an Instagram post saying my new address is, and he gave out an address for Geralt, and then at the end he said, I might not be there, monster hunting as it is, and he just. I'm really happy that he has as much passion as he does for this. People like to give him shit. I really like him as Superman. I don't think Superman in the DCEU is bad because of Henry Cavill.
Absolutely.
I think there's a lot of other factors. Yeah. He's a fantastic actor. I haven't seen Mission Impossible 6 yet. You have, right, Jordan?
Yeah, it's good. He's good in the movie.
Yeah. And so I have a couple of questions for you guys real quick. So first of all, this Hollywood criticism, is it justified? Is it really the smaller role in the long term? They're saying like, oh, he's trading in, because whenever you take a role, you're taking time away from another role you can be playing. That's how it works.
Sure.
And a lot of these big Hollywood people, reporters and stuff, just feel like, in a positive way, I guess, they're like, man, Henry Cavill was building up this great resume. We wanted to see him be the next big it thing in Hollywood movies, but he decided to pick this Netflix series. So like, what do you think about that?
I don't think they're saying he decided to pick this Netflix series, Jared, because it was 10 plus years ago when Hollywood actors started saying, I could make a little less money doing TV, but it'd be way more fulfilling as an actor. It'd be, just a lot better situation overall, and especially if you're already established, like, Kevin Spacey going into House of Cards. Obviously, his situation has changed, but even Robin Wright,
love Robin Wright. Yeah,
there's so many examples of like Hollywood actors that we're watching in our Netflix shows, our AMC shows. These HBO, like the Prestige television has had Hollywood actors for years and years and years now. Like that, there was a transition where it was like, oh, Hollywood actors are in TV shows now, but that was about 10 or 12 years ago. So what's happening here is those Hollywood reporters are saying, really what it is, oh my God, I can't believe he's doing a video game adaptation.
Yeah,
I thought he was actually going somewhere, because you wouldn't say to Robin Wright or Kevin Spacey, hey, you're doing House of Cards with Netflix? Netflix is only online, right? They don't even have cable broadcasts. It's like, fucking come on.
Nah, Jordan, I think you have a good point where this is just like another example of like streaming, like Netflix it's becoming more legit. This is just another example, and like it's like when players in sports leagues or whatever start going to a certain team or whatever, it's like they suck until but some guy has to go there. And then someone else will go there, and then they get good, right? So now Netflix gets good.
Well, basketball team's a good example. It's like, we need 5 guys. We have 0 good ones. Well, you get LeBron James,
start with 1.
And that puts you up a lot. Like, that's a big difference.
Exactly.
So, and then eventually, Jason Bateman is doing his own Netflix show. Maybe there's a different situation there, but I think that's kind of equivalent. Like, he's been in a bunch of big movies, mostly comedies, but maybe it was kind of the same thing where he wanted something more serious and couldn't find that on the big screen, so he did Netflix. I don't know, but I think.
Well, Arrested Development was 15 years ago when he was doing that.
Oh shoot, man, I forgot about that show.
But that's what I'm saying though, is we've had Hollywood actors in these big TV roles for years now, and so because we were doing the same thing, Dom, 5 years ago with comics. It's like, oh, that big actor, like, oh, Rachel McAdams is going to be in Doctor Strange. Benedict Cumberbatch, he's such a good actor. Why would you go and do that? It's like. Fuck off.
It's kind of the same thing going to superhero movies. Yeah, it's like Brie
how
Larson.
That was
why would you
5 years
choose
ago.
Captain Marvel?
Yeah,
like,
now no one's saying
Oscar.
shit to Brie Larson because we've gotten over that hump. And in 2022, when Ryan Gosling is, playing the dude from Heavy Rain or what the fuck ever, then no one's going to say shit to him. But now they're like, oh, comics are cool now, I guess. But video games, those are still not cool, man.
Yeah.
So, Jared, to answer your question, I think me and Jordan both think that people from Hollywood that are saying shit like that are just wrong, I guess.
Well, and the crazy
this is an entourage.
Yeah,
like what? Is he not going to get paid enough? You guys worried about his fucking salary or something? Like,
I just think
literally, eat a dick.
You guys hit the nail on the head. I think it's that they don't respect the material, and they're like, "Oh, you're doing that." And the funny thing is, people forget like Millie Bobby Brown is going to be in the new Godzilla, which looks fantastic. She came from Netflix. She was on Stranger Things. Like Stranger Things made her career, you know. So it's like,
what's important about this is, to me, they haven't said shit about the video games. This is a book adaptation.
Yeah,
you know, this is a fantasy novel adaptation. Like, at what point does it like? Yeah, The Witcher got popular off of the games, but like they have never said anything. This is not the Castlevania Netflix series, is I guess what I'm saying.
Yeah, I wonder, think though that most people are going to watch it. Most people that are our age are going to watch it because of the video game, not because of the books.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Older people are just going to see it on Netflix and watch it because it looks interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dom, what were you going to say? I cut you off by accident.
Well, yeah, I was kind of questioning what you're saying. Like, I wonder, which has more popularity, the Witcher video games or the books?
And the games, by far.
Okay.
Games.
All right.
The reason the books,
I figured, but I wasn't sure.
The reason the books got translated to English was because of the
games.
Yeah,
like, Dom, we don't even have...
We talked about it.
There's one book, we still don't even have it in English.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So that makes sense then. So definitely, you're definitely right then, about people who watch the show are going to watch it because of the game.
This goes back to our conversation of the fuckboy who wrote the books, who's...
right.
For all intents and purposes, is just a douchebag. Like, every interview, he's snotty, and every time he pops up in the public, it's like, this fucking guy again. Dude,
I wonder...
You would not have, like... Yeah, you're pissed off because you sold it to him for a flat rate and you didn't get shit off of your property. But it still resulted in a shit ton of book sales for you. It still resulted in a Netflix adaptation, so maybe you should shut up.
And it's his fault.
I'm coming after a lot of people this episode. I've been telling people to shut the fuck up the whole episode.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Dom?
I was just going to wonder, too. So, like, did he sell, all his... Basically, what does he get out of the show? Does he have any... influence, or is he just
probably just sold
royalties?
The rights to a interactive video game, but he's probably still got the rights for like movie and TV adaptations.
That's what I wondered. Yeah,
I bet.
Who knows? He didn't seem very smart at the time for the rate he got for it. He might have just sold the rights to different people, and then now that it blew up, he's kind of upset.
It
could be he's just curmudgeon. Yeah, I don't know.
He's certainly,
but it's not like he's getting. Yeah, it's so dumb.
Yeah.
Anyways, getting back to a different aspect. So what I want to know from you guys, you kind of inspired this question, Jordan, in our conversation through our messenger when this news broke. What are your guys' expectations for this series, and like what are your wish lists? Like what do you want to see? And throwing this in there, do you have any like dream castings potentially for any characters? I've never finished The Witcher 3. I played a good amount of it, but I never finished it. I think you two are more qualified to talk about expectations, wish list, and dream casting. So go ahead.
Dandelion. That's like my... It's obvious he's going to be in this because he's like the most ridiculous character in The Witcher 3. And in I only read the one book, but he's in that book too, and he's just got the most characters. All I'll say. So I think he's a guarantee he'll be in the show.
He's a great counterpart to Geralt's, like his gritty, serious, like hard-boiled type of deal. And Dandelion is, literally takes the name of a flower and is this, what do you call him? The guys that sing songs.
He's the bard, right?
He's a bard. He's a womanizer. He owns his own bar. Like, he's the creative, free flow. He's like, it's kind of like chaos versus order type of thing, So, yeah, he's just such a great counterpart.
Yeah, so I'd definitely like to see him, and I assume we will. And then obviously, like, I want to see Yen and Triss. I think that's got to be that's got to be like a main part of the show, right? Like,
the drama,
right?
Yeah,
some drama there, and whatever that ends up being, the details, not important. But I assume that both of those characters will be a big part of this. And then how, like, I don't know, I just want them in it because like they're interesting, and like all the witches or sorcerers or whatever in this world are really that's a whole interesting thing. Man, there's just a lot, but those are kind of the two I think. Ciri, I don't know. I don't know if... I assume that she'll be part of it too.
She's the central part of the books, like the entire saga, so she's going to have to be.
Okay, so I've not gotten far enough in the books then. So
I'm assuming she'll be... Sorry. She'll probably be the main narrative thread, and then the drama of the episode to episode will probably be Triss and Yennefer, right? Trying to figure out that whole relationship, while Geralt's still trying to figure out that whole thing.
And then more than anything, though, the last thing I want to say I think we'll all agree. We probably all would have said this. I'm just going to say it first because I'm a snide little asshole. Is like each individual episode is I want like great side stories with different things going on in the world.
Oh yeah.
That are isolated to that episode for the most part, or a couple episodes or whatever. But like just like in The Witcher 3, where the side quests are just brilliant, and even like part of the branches along the main quest are just brilliant, and the writing there is just phenomenal, and you're just fully bought into that shit. Like that's what this needs more than anything.
So I think that obviously this is not a weekly show, so you can't have a weekly monster or monster hunt. But I think episodic, or like every episode having a different monster that he hunts down. It doesn't have to be like literally every episode, but pretty much every episode.
I don't want too much formula though.
But it could be to different extents. Like one episode could be like the monster is the crux of the episode, and other times it's just like a side part that is means to an end. You know what I mean?
There could literally be a time where they're like, riding their horses down the road, and Geralt just takes a sword out and throws it, and then it just into a monster, and then he walks over and picks it up, and they keep going. Like I just want to see lots of monsters in the show. I want to see Geralt hunting them down. I want to see him putting oils on his sword, taking different salves and potions, because a big part of The Witcher, they de-emphasized it a little bit in the third one, but especially in the second one. They like for you to like prepare for your battles and like get your equipment all ready and like put different modifiers on there for like just this specific battle. So I'd like to see him do that. You mentioned Dandelion. I would love to see them. Like I would like it if Dandelion and Geralt are in every episode. Maybe Dandelion goes off and does his own thing every now and then, but like those are the two main characters of the show. I would love that. And then I mentioned, I kind of gave you a little wish list here, Jared. I want to see the Scoia'tael, all right? So they are elven rebels, I should say, not rebels, with a V. And they hide out in the woods, and the Scoia'tael is elven for squirrel. So they're basically like little hunters in the woods, and they're kind of like a guerrilla warfare type of thing. So like Yorveth, he's one of the leaders there, and he's in the games. I'd really like to see him and his Scoia'tael. And then branching off of that, I mentioned Brokilon, the Forest of Death, which is home to the Brokilon Dryads, which are trippy green huntresses. And this is a place where you don't want to go if you're a human, because you'll just get hit with, like, they say something in the book where it's like you'll hear the arrow like a millisecond before it hits you in the throat and you're already dead. Like, this is like a place that you don't want to fuck with unless you have an escort like Geralt does when he goes there or whatever. And then these are like trippy green elvish druid dryad, whatever the fuck you call them, ladies. They're like huntresses. So those are really fucking cool. And then there's a big emphasis on witches and obviously magic in The Witcher. But like there's the Lodge of Sorceresses, which is like a group, like a council of witches that they talk about in the books. And they're trying to like basically handle the situation that's going on with Ciri, because basically she's like a super powerful being, is the reason that like everyone wants to get like take control of Ciri, like because she's, almost, they treat her almost like a commodity basically. And so I'd love to see the Lodge of Sorceresses with Philippa Eilhart, and Triss is part of that, Yennefer's a part of that, Sheila de Tankerville, Kira Metz. There's like a lot of these witches are in the games, especially 2 and 3. But I'd like to see them in their live action form, sitting down at this like council table, and all these witches. It's only female witches in the lodge, so there's just a lot of cool lore stuff in The Witcher that I want to see them touch. And then there's a lot of cool, more base level stuff that I was talking about, with like weekly monster hunts would be really cool. Obviously the romance, choosing between Yennefer and Triss is kind of the main option there. And then of course the whole Ciri storyline, which is more of like the, power dynamics, political, Game of Thrones type shit for that universe.
Let's go. This is hype. I'm just ready.
Yeah, dude. This is one of those things that, like, it got announced, and it's been years since we've heard anything about it, and I have put that, like, way far back there in my brain, because I'm like, I am going to be way too excited for this shit, and I just need to, temper my expectations.
I think for me, you guys had a lot to say. Before we close out the show, the last thing I want to say is, it's fine. It's perfectly fine.
Well, I guess you
said,
like,
I'm excited about it too.
You were kind of leaving it up to us because you haven't really fucked with The Witcher too much.
Yeah, the one thing I want to say is that for me, my castings, from what I've played for Triss and Yennefer, these are only my suggestions, so don't berate me. And everyone has their own opinion of what they want. For me, I would love if Karen Gillan played Triss. Yeah. Karen Gillan is obviously Nebula. She's also from Doctor Who. I think she has the ability to bring that physicality that you'll need to the role. For Yennefer, it's interesting because for her, I could see her being played by a little bit older of an actress, not too old, but like I could see like a Charlize Theron or somebody of like that age where they maybe read a little bit younger, or I could see somebody in their 20s. I think that she could read either way on screen. So.
I think she's got to be at least mid-30s.
You think so? Okay.
Yeah, Triss is like the young gal that he's having fun with, and Yennefer's like that the kind of the one that got away, the one that he's always chasing. Like that's his top level gal that he's going after, I guess.
My dream casting for Yennefer would be Megan Fox if she was a good actress.
Jesus.
Okay. If she was a good actress.
Dude, okay, shout out to her. She did she was a series regular on New Girl for multiple seasons, I think. And I was like, where the hell have you been, Megan Fox? Like, she was great, dude. She had no business. It was like weird as fuck. But she like fit into that like ensemble cast really well, and she was funny, and she read her lines really well. So I honestly think that Megan Fox is like probably a better actor than the Transformers movie, or whatever you've seen her in, probably Belied.
What's the name of the actress from Princess Diaries that was also Catwoman in the Nolan trilogy?
Oh, you mean Anne Hathaway?
Yeah.
What about her for Yennefer?
No, here's the thing. And this is like, I won't go too far into this because this is like some deep psych shit, but it's like the type of girl, like, Anne Hathaway is a very pretty woman. She's a very beautiful woman. I don't see her as being like hot and sexy and like voluptuous. Yennefer needs to be fucking voluptuous. You know what I mean? She needs to be like a fox. And Anne Hathaway's just like, oh yeah, she's a very pretty, beautiful woman, but it's just like, she's not like
I get what you're saying. Not
like
necessarily pretty or seductive.
Over. You need to lust over Yen. You know what I mean?
I gotcha. Yeah, I gotcha. Anyways, that's been our show. Hopefully, I want to hear, now that the ball's dropped on Geralt, I want to hear more casting news. I want to see who they end up casting for all of these things. And I want to get casting news for some of the not so popular characters. Like, so obviously you guys are really interested in Dandelion, which a lot of fans of Witcher would be. But to the normal person who's heard of The Witcher, they know about Geralt, but they don't know who the hell Dandelion is. It'd be cool to hear that casting news.
Obviously, there's going to be other Witchers. Vesemir, who is Ciri's kind of a Witcher in herself, actually, based on how you choose the path you choose in the game. But Ciri gets raised by the Witchers, and so she's got a lot of that vibe. And then Vesemir is his mentor, Lambert, and there's a bunch of them. So yeah, that'll be cool.
Thank you guys for listening. Let's get into what we've been playing, what we're going to be playing real quick. Spider-Man, obviously, and I'm not sure what I'm going to be starting up next. Yeah, you're going to be playing God of War. Now that I've finished Punisher, I don't know what I'm going to be watching, but yeah, Spider-Man for sure, and Messenger as well. What about you, Jordan?
If you could do me a favor this week, and just sometime, if you could give away an hour of your time to watch Ozark Season 1, Episode 1 on Netflix. Oh boy almighty. I think since you don't like Breaking Bad, if you don't like this, then I'm going to be like, oh, you just don't like this type of show. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the whole money laundering, like underground, black market type of stuff. So I'm hoping that since this is a show that's similar to Breaking Bad, but it's different at the same time, maybe this will be exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah.
But
what are you going to be playing, Jordan?
I don't know, man. There's nothing of import coming out this week. It's just probably If I'm being honest, I'll probably go back to God of War 2 just because it's a way more important game than anything coming out these days.
Unfortunately, we probably won't have Jordan next week to give his Spider-Man impressions, but we'll obviously have a spoiler cast once we've all finished the game, and he'll talk about it. I'm
sure we'll be talking about it. I mean, we're still talking about God of War, months later. So I'm sure we'll talk about it forever. But yeah, very, very pumped for Spider-Man. I'm so pumped. Obviously, the story is I think is gonna be great. At least it's gonna be, interesting. I'm sure because Insomniac knows what the fuck they're doing. The gameplay is gonna be great because they know what they're doing. The environments, it's gonna look good. It's gonna sound good. But I'm excited for the small things, dude. I'm excited to be just, having some of those times where you're like in between side quests and you're not really fucking with the main story, and so you're just swinging around Manhattan. Or like the moments where you find, Jared, you're talking about how we're fucking comic book nerds, so we're gonna get some of these Easter eggs that they're putting out there. Can't wait for that.
I better see Boomerang mentioned at some point.
Captain Boomerang, or no, Captain Boomerang.
Just Boomerang.
DC.
Just Boomerang. Just
DC.
Boomerang. Yeah.
But yeah, it's like there's just gonna be a lot of stuff that I know that I'm gonna really enjoy. That is stuff that you can't necessarily pinpoint. It's not like, oh, I'm really excited for the combat or something like that.
The small moments, yeah. The moments in between moments.
The moments in between, yeah. And just being Spider-Man and swinging around Manhattan and being up, jumping up on top of a fucking building and just kind of hanging out there and doing the Spidey pose or whatever. I just can't wait, man. I'm so excited.
As
Switching
big
out
as
suits and upgrading. Oh, it's going to be great.
As big as superhero movies and TV shows have gotten, the video game realm, we've kind of been on a drought. Outside of the Arkham trilogy, there hasn't been any solid actual superhero games. We've had Sunset Overdrive, which is for all intents and purposes a superhero game, but it's not a licensed superhero.
Well, same with Infamous or whatever.
Exactly.
I think that it's crazy, Jared, how long this aftermath of the aftermath of licensed games has just drug out so long. People are so skittish to jump back in because of the way licensed games ended up, just being exploited. And so it's weird how long that is lasting because, it's like, holy shit, these properties are just going to waste, man. You guys could be printing fucking money out here. So hopefully that changes.
Interesting thing is, from what I've heard, Marvel Games, their actual plan, their long game plan, is to release a AAA title every year.
Jesus. So what do you think? You think we're getting Avengers next year?
No, they said that's their initial plan. They don't know if that starts with Spider-Man or if that starts with Avengers. But people speculate that we're going to get Avengers, and then the next year or a year and a half after, we're getting that Guardians game from the Deus Ex developers. What's their name?
You're not Crystal, but Eidos.
Eidos Montreal. Thank you guys for listening to our show this week. If you can, please leave us a rating on iTunes. It definitely helps us move us forward and have other people listen to us. If you can, subscribe to us on YouTube. Every subscription helps. Even if you don't watch it on YouTube, if you listen to it on iTunes or wherever you listen to it, Google Play, it definitely helps as well. You can follow us on Twitter at CTRLINT. I try to post all of our latest uploads there. You can follow me at Jared _. I usually tweet things about comic books or Drake having ghostwriters. You can follow Dom at Dom's Oreos. He usually likes my tweets about Drake having ghostwriters. And you can follow Jordan at Melomotus.
It was
a good one. It's a good one. Which, people still need to be giving him shit, and that's not as much of a thing anymore than it was, 2 or 3 years ago when people were really talking about it. So I'm glad, Jared. I'm appreciating that you're out there fighting the good fight.
Fighting the good fight. Anyways,
for whack-ass MCs, bruh.
We'll fight the good fight. We'll catch you guys next week. Dom and I will have our impressions on Spider-Man, and Jordan will be back the week after that. So catch you guys next time. Bye.